Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining this stream. Main news update for 6th of October. Now it's 10 o'clock in the evening Moscow time, and as always, I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments, and hopefully, you will find news segment informative and interesting. After news segment, I will join community chat as I do always. And if you want to discuss any topic, dear friends, if you have a question, please use capital letters while writing this comment or the question. And also simultaneously, because I'm streaming on YouTube and Rumble, you can use a super chat or round feature on Rumble. This way, you will highlight question or comment and also support this project. That's been said, dear friends. I have before I start new segment, I have a little announcement, which is that today I start publishing short videos from news updates themselves. I'm not recording some separate videos, not yet, at least. And this feature may not necessarily be useful for our community, but maybe some of these short videos, dear friends, will reach, will manage to break through barriers that algorithm is creating, and this might be helpful in the future. I don't know. I just start publishing these shorts. Let's see if it will work out. And dear friends, today I published first news update too. Initially, it was published on my Patreon and Boosty pages, and after a couple of hours, I published on YouTube and Rumble too, but algorithm killed it quite effectively. But in case you want to check that video out, it's there, by the way, right on the page. And so, okay, that's about it for intro. Let's talk about news now. And first of all, as headline says of this news segment, Russian spy agency, foreign intelligence agency, yet again shared with the public information about plans on a terrorist activity that is being generated in UK among British intelligence community, among British political elites, and RT and many other media outlets are reporting about it, of course. RT's headline is that UK is furious over failed Russia strategy, spy agency. So let's go through details here. Britain is furious over its failure to bring about the strategic defeat of Russia and is preparing new provocations in response to battlefield gains in Ukraine conflict, battlefield gains of Russian armed forces. Moscow's Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR, has warned. In a statement on Monday, that is today, the SVR claimed that UK's secret services have resorted to preparing a group of Russian nationals who fight for a Kiev regime to sabotage either Ukrainian vessel or foreign civilian vessel in European port, after which London would accuse Moscow of orchestrating this attack. Foreign Intelligence Service also claimed that the group would leave behind them Chinese-made underwater equipment, which would later be presented as a proof of Beijing's support for Russia. London expects Europe's Russophobic elites to use the fake narrative to justify further military aid to Ukraine and the greater militarization against Russia. The spy agency said. Russia's leadership, dear friends, considers the UK, as you know, one of the most hostile Western states. Relations between the two countries have only worsened since the escalation of the Ukraine conflict in 2022. London has imposed multiple rounds of sanctions on Russian banks, energy exports, and individuals, while expanding military aid to include long-range Storm Shadow missiles and training for Kiev regime's forces. So yet another warning from Russian spy agency, foreign intelligence agency, about terrorist plans that London has. And while being warned, one should be prepared also, as one say goes. And maybe this revelation from Russian intelligence community will have some influence on the plans of London, and maybe they will skip whatever terrorist activity they had in plans, right? We will find out soon, I guess. Also, dear friends, when it comes to hostility of the Western world towards Russia, it's not just the political class. But you might be surprised, maybe, but Western so-called media is no any less. Of course, this so-called media is operating under their strict control of Western secret services, so we should not be surprised, really. But nevertheless, it is interesting that Politico, this American media outlet, formerly media outlet, basically began creating yet another false narrative to call then NATO countries to take some action against Russian so-called shadow fleet. And so, according to Politico, tankers carrying Russian oil are polluting waters off the coast of Europe. Tankers of European countries they're okay, but they do no wrong, or any other vessels. But tankers carrying Russian oil, that not necessarily might be the Russian whatsoever, are polluting waters off the coast of Europe. That's their headline here. Let's go into details. So despite Western sanctions, at least 5 Russian tankers have continued to sail unimpeded in the European waters over the past year following oil spills, highlighting their insufficiencies of controls on their shadow fleet, Politico reports. Since when Politico became an institution that tracks activities of other navies and demands some measures to be taken? What the hell is going on here? It's a legit question, isn't it? Since when Politico become some military wing of NATO or something like that? Anyways, let's continue here. Russian oil tankers continue to dump oil off European shores despite Western sanctions, Politico reports. According to joint investigation by Politico and group source material, over the past year, at least 5 Russian vessels from the so-called Shadow Fleet have left oil spills but continue to navigate European waters unimpeded. 2 of these vessels were already subject to individual UK sanctions. Among them was the tanker Dynasty, which left 12 kilometers sleek in Spanish waters in November 2024, while under London sanctions. Following the incident, the EU also blacklisted it. Experts, so-called experts, know that the deteriorating conditions of the vessels and their opaque ownership structure increases the risk of accidents, while the lack of insurance due to sanctions complicates the identification and the prosecution of those responsible. Latvian Energy Minister Chihuahua from Baltics, Kaspars Melnis, called the problem enormous, and experts warn that the cost of the cleaning up a major spill could reach 1.4 billion euros. In response to new incidents, the EU is expanding its sanctions list to include an additional 118 Russian vessels in September 2024. However, experts and the EU representatives consider this measure insufficient and propose tightening controls not only on vessels but also on the entire shipping chain, including oil refineries, insurance companies, and flag registries. France and other countries have called on the military and NATO to take joint action against suspicious vessels, and that's the key point here, isn't it, by the way? That's the key point. All this article of Politico, all this so-called investigation is about this pushing this narrative that NATO should take some action. And that's why I asked in the beginning, since when Politico become a tool, official tool, it seems like, of NATO, spearhead of the NATO. This is not what journalists should do, I believe, right? But nevertheless, dear friends, just a couple of days ago, we have seen piracy on part of France when they, for a couple of days, detained a vessel that allegedly was carrying Russian oil. That was not the first incident. There was a number of incidents before that, and I'm afraid there will be a number of incidents after that, under whatever false pretext, by the way, that Russian tankers or tankers that are linked to Russia are leaving oil spill and they're doing this and that. But in reality, we all know what is going on, isn't it? NATO countries, globalists and globalist control regimes in the collective West want to shut down Baltic Sea for Russian Federation. They want to do the same in the Northern Sea through English Channel, and they might try to do so in the Mediterranean also. And that means Moscow's warnings have not been listened, and probably soon we will see Russian military vessels escorting caravans of their tankers or other type of vessels that are directly or indirectly linked to Russia. And let's see what NATO countries will dare to do when these convoys of vessels are escorted by Russian battleships. But they're gonna try to escalate. And until they've been checked, right? Until they've been forced to act adequately, they will continue escalation. We all know that because globalist control regimes in the Western world, they have no, and their allies have no reverse gear. They cannot help themselves. They cannot stop. They have to be forced to act accordingly, and Russia will do it. One day, one way or another, but Russia will force Western so-called elites to come to their senses, face the reality, no matter how painful that reality might be for them, right? Acknowledge defeat in this proxy war that they launch against Russia and basically capitulate. And after that, things might get better. Anyways, let's continue, dear friends. And as I said, until Russia will force Western so-called elites to capitulate, they're not gonna de-escalate. Only further provocations to be expected. And therefore, no one should be surprised that according to EU Defense Commissioner Andrius Kubilius, Germany has evidence that Russia is discussing an attack on NATO. How interesting, isn't it? For how many years we have heard that Russia is planning to attack NATO? Russia is planning to attack this country of NATO and that country. And how come that until now Russia did not actually attack? How interesting, isn't it? But narrative has to go on, right? Narrative has to go on, and EU bureaucrats doing just that, pushing for these false narratives. And allegedly, Germany has evidences even that Russia is discussing an attack on NATO, which is, if we go through some thought process, only way Russia will attack any NATO country is if provoked, right? And you think why Moscow was warning so many times NATO countries? Why Moscow was warning and continues to warn Western countries or NATO member states to act adequately? Exactly because Moscow wants to avoid confrontation, right? Otherwise, why would you warn your enemy? You will just wait for an opportunity and then strike, right? But no, Russia wants to avoid escalation with NATO. Russia wants to avoid military confrontation. And that's why so many warnings are coming from Moscow. But no one, unfortunately, is listening in the West, among Western elites, right? And so therefore, theoretically speaking, is it possible that one day Russian Federation, Russian militaries might actually take some action against their military and logistical infrastructure of NATO countries? Yes, theoretically speaking, that is possible. When this attack might happen, or will this type of attack happen unprovokedly? No, absolutely impossible. Then when this attack might happen, another question can rise. And the answer is when Western elites will go ahead with the next phase of escalation against Russia. And I did spoke about what I mean by this next phase of escalation. I'm quite sure that I have enough, good enough reading of the big picture based on all the indicators that we are seeing to claim that, in my personal opinion, globalist control regimes in the West, first of all in Europe, by the way, are planning next phase of escalation with Russia, which will mean potentially combined attack when simultaneously NATO countries and their proxy regime in Kiev will attempt decapitation strike on Russia, strike on Russian political and military leadership, that is, simultaneous large-scale, unprecedented scale drone and missile strikes deep into Russian Federation. Simultaneously, NATO countries and their proxy Kiev regime will use what most of their assets that they probably have on Russian territory to conduct large-scale terrorist attacks. And same time, we should expect a large-scale, unprecedented scale cyber attack on Russian infrastructure. That's what I mean by mentioning this next phase of escalation. And I'm afraid globalists and their allies gonna launch this assault on Russia, combined assault on Russia in a relatively short time. And once this will happen, if this will happen, Moscow definitely can and most likely will retaliate with such a force and scale that probably whole world will be shocked. Not just the globalists themselves and their proxies or their puppets in governments of all these Western countries, but the whole world probably will be shocked. But what you expect, by the way, Moscow was exercising restraint for a year, another year, third year, it's fourth year now. At one point, Moscow will say enough is enough. Let's teach them a lesson now. And as a response on the next phase of escalation, Moscow probably will take action against military and logistical infrastructure of NATO countries too. But yet again, that will be a retaliatory strike. As I already said, Moscow in no circumstances will attack unprovokedly, right? And that's exactly why Moscow is still to nowadays issuing warnings towards NATO members not to escalate any further, right? That's my comment on this topic, dear friends. Let's continue with some other news. And all these weeks, topic of unidentified drones all over Europe is being actively discussed. False flag after false flag operation is conducted there, and the former Russian president and current deputy chairman of the Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, commented on that. And let me, dear friends, read the comment of the Medvedev. It's quite a big comment, but I think interesting one. You might agree with him or not, but comment itself is quite interesting, and I will show you on the screen, dear friends. Hopefully image will be good enough so that you can pause the video and read this comment if you want to. But I will read this comment, if I may, just in case the quality of photo is not good enough. And so let's go through Medvedev's comments here. So Dmitry Medvedev on the recent European drone hysteria. And rest is in quotes, by the way. European cities have been hit by an epidemic of UFD, or unidentified flying drones. UFs or drones are everywhere, near the military bases, at airports, in the fields, and over cities. Whose they are is unclear. What are their theories? Medvedev is asking. First, provocations by banderites aimed at improving arms supplies and provoking war. Second, activities of pro-Russian underground groups in these countries aimed at destabilizing life in the EU. Third, testing the resilience of their air defense systems conducted by local special services. False flag, basically. Fourth, local hooligans playing around with their mischievous intentions. Fifth, direct drone deployment from Russia. Which theories are plausible then? Medvedev is asking. The first is quite likely, although the part of their typical WAV can usually be tracked. A lot of senseless Ukro avoiders, he's talking about deserters, by the way, live in Europe. Launching drones in Europe is safer than on the front line. So according to Medvedev, first point can be the truth that this is basically provocation by Kiev regime to further enhance Westerners to send more money and more weapons, and also potentially to provoke even a wider war. What about second point? Medvedev is saying that second theory is theoretically also possible, but still doubtful. People sympathetic to our country will not waste their resources in vain by coming out of their underground. Our agents and the malls, in the quotes, by the way, are waiting for a separate command. And he is, of course, somewhat sarcastic here, and same time not really sarcastic, because obviously it's not just Western secret services that do have some assets probably on Russian territory. Russian security services also have assets in Western countries. But yet again, Medvedev is saying that, well, it is highly unlikely that it's either our supporters or our actual assets, because it does not worth it, right? The third explanation, Medvedev says, yes, special services and national armed forces in the West must check their readiness to repel drone attacks. This theory is workable, according to Medvedev. So he did not use the false flag terminology, but that's what his statement basically means, that all these drone stories are false flag operations staged by Western secret services for whatever reason, to further increase pressure on the public that is already being terrorized by this non-existent Russian threat, right? Which allows Western elites to basically allocate whatever sums they want from taxpayers to any pocket they like, right? Also, there can be some other reasons too. For example, just to check at least how ready this or that NATO member state is to deal with the drone situation. But anyways, this theory, third one, is being called workable by Medvedev, and yes, I will agree with him on that. When it comes to fourth theory, Medvedev is writing, of course, local idlers can fool around by launching drones. Why not annoy their bureaucrats? Good way. So yes, it is also possible that at least in some cases, locals that don't really have much to do, I guess, are using these drones to make some noise, right, and annoy officials and everyone else, right? Possible, for sure. Fifth theory was quite extensively commented on during the Valdai discussion by the president of Russia. There is nothing to add here, and his words also correlate with the fourth theory. In fact, the causes of their panic around the Russian drones could be any of the reasons given or combination of them. The main thing is not that. The main thing is that the short-sighted European elites feel on their own skin what the danger of a war is, that they fear and tremble like stupid animals in a herd being driven to their slaughter, that they soil themselves with their fear, anticipating their near and painful end. So here Medvedev goes, of course, all in his statement, and then he continues, dear friends. Or maybe he said, maybe then they will understand what war is and tear their heads off their freaks like Merz and Macron, who make money and the political points on blood, Medvedev said. And I think his comment is interesting, dear friends, because he went through several scenarios here. And he acknowledged that some are plausible, some are not, and so on. All right, share what your take is, dear friends. What you think these drones are coming from? Me personally, I have some doubts that those drones have anything to do with the Russian Federation. Uh, in my opinion, this is all in main part false flag operations, and I would not exclude possibility that some people in Europe that really don't really have much to do are also using the drones to just annoy everyone, right? But mainly, I think it's a false flag operations. And dear friends, that's been said. Let's continue with some other news now. And what is next? Next is information about work of Russian air defense systems. I shared this information during the first update today, but because algorithm killed that video, I will repeat, if I may, that according to RIA Novosti, a report which is based on Defense Ministry's update, past night, Kyiv regime launched hundreds of drones with assistance of NATO to strike deep into Russian territory, and 251 drones were intercepted. A large-scale, clearly large-scale attempt to strike deep into Russia. I can give you some specifics here. 62 drones were intercepted over the Black Sea. I guess they were directed towards Crimea, and the Russian air defense systems neutralized them over there. See, 40 drones were intercepted over the Crimea itself, 34 drones over the Kursk region, 30 over Belgorod, 20 over Nizhny Novgorod, 17 over Voronezh, 11 over the Krasnodar region, 8 each over the Bryansk and Tula regions, 5 over the waters of the Azov Sea, 4 over the Ryazan region, 2 each over the Vladimir, Ivanovo, Kaluga, Tambov, and Oryol regions. Unfortunately, geography of this large-scale attempt to strike deep into Russian territory on behalf of NATO and the Kyiv regime is quite vast, and you can tell this based on the names of the regions where drones were intercepted. The majority of drones, as it is always the case, were intercepted, but not always possible to intercept 100% of aerial targets. And for example, dear friends, there was a death. There was a casualties in the Belgorod region, as you know, yesterday and day before yesterday. Kyiv regime is actively sharing energy infrastructure in the Belgorod region. There was a blackout in the region because one of their energy facilities was hit, targeted with their US-made HIMARS multi-launch rocket systems. HIMARS was launching those missiles from Kharkov city itself, not the first time, which is a war crime, by the way, but who cares among Western so-called elites what kind of war crimes Kyiv regime and their allies from NATO are committing. And unfortunately, what happened is that when Russian engineers went to repair the damage on energy facility, Kyiv regime launched another strike exactly towards that energy facility, and as a result, two engineers, two civilians that were trying to repair this energy facility was killed. Let me give you some details on that. So death toll from the Ukrainian Armed Forces missile strike on Belgorod has risen to 2. Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov announced on a telegram. And we have quote from him: man injured in a missile strike in Belgrade today has died in the hospital's intensive care unit. He was in critical condition. Doctors did everything they could, but were unable to save him. The regional governor wrote. Another civilian died in the same attack right at his workplace. At the time, he was helping to deal with the aftermath of previous shelling by Ukrainian militants. So unfortunately, another civilians, by the way, have been killed as a result of deployment of U.S.-made or Western-made weapon systems. In this particular case, many sources are reporting that it was HIMARS MLRS. And when it comes to these long-range strikes conducted by NATO and the Kyiv regime, Russian media today also reported that 3 drones were diffused in the Tyumen region. By the way, in Tyumen city itself, which is quite far away from a line of contact. Let me first share with you information, and then I will show you on the map, by the way, where Tyumen is, and I will share my take from where these drones could be launched. So 3 drones have been neutralized over the Tyumen. The Tyumen Oblast government informed their information center reported, and we have quote here: 3 drones were discovered and neutralized on the premises of the company in the Antipino micro-district of Tyumen. There were no casualties, the publication states. Emergency services arrived at the scene where the drones were discovered and prevented their detonation, avoiding explosions and fires. So I guess these drones failed, by the way, maybe due to work of radio electronic warfare, maybe due to technical some issues. They failed. They reached the city itself, and they failed without detonation. And then sappers were called in, emergency services, and these drones were diffused. And now let me show you the geography, by the way, of the area where this city is located. So this is a line of contact here. And this is Tyumen, by the way. It's far eastern in Siberia, and this is approximately area where these drones were diffused. And if you take a look at the map, dear friends, it is becoming clear to me personally, at least, that these drones could not be launched from Kyiv-controlled territory. Only area from where these drones might were launched is Kazakhstan. And this is not the first time, dear friends, when drones are these NATO drones, NATO proxy Kyiv regime drones are discovered in far east of Russia, in Siberia, and even further than that, from line of contact. And only logical explanation for it is that these drones have been launched from Kazakhstan, from Republic of Kazakhstan. And if true, by the way, I'm quite sure Russian investigators will consider all possibilities, right? And if there is objective reasons to believe that Kazakhstani territory was used by terrorists of Western-backed regime of Zelensky, terrorist regime of Zelensky, then I think security services of Kazakhstan, this former Soviet Republic, have to intensify their work, because this is totally unacceptable. This is totally unacceptable. And if Kazakhstani officials are not capable of dealing with this situation, if they cannot control their own territory, well, maybe Russia can help with that, if necessary. I'm just saying, you know, because there is no way, by the way, no way these drones were launched from Kyiv-controlled territory itself. Absolutely impossible. My personal take on that, right? That's been said, dear friends, let's continue with some other news. Although before that, let me highlight that wow, dear friends, only 63 members of community on a stream right now on YouTube. I cannot see Rumble, but only 63 on YouTube. Okay, I guess I guess some major big channels have live streams, and that's one of the reasons why not that many people are watching my live stream, and therefore I am ever more grateful to you, dear friends, for your time and for your attention. I really hope my news updates worth your time and your support. And when it comes to support, dear friends, Anya, my wife, just send me message here that there was a super chat on Rumble from a blorper, and I will highlight this super chatter during the community uh, chat during the question time. I will thank Blorp for super chat now. And also, dear friends, I wanted to say that this project is completely independent, as you know. Um, and if you want to support, you can do it through several means. All the links are on this video description box and in the pinned comment. And also during the live streams, there is a super chat feature on Rumble or Round feature, and you can become a premium subscriber there too. Um, all of you are, I guess, veterans of our community, so I would not go into details because you know what kind of support platforms I have. So I will just say, dear friends, if you can, please consider to join our Patreon community. That would be great, great support, of course, because with Patreon, you know what kind of support you have. Um, while on monthly basis, while with donations, you just never know, right? Okay, that's been said, dear friends, let me continue with some other news, and maybe more people will join our live stream meanwhile. And let me check what is there next here. And next is progress information about progress of the special military operation. TASS news agency is reporting that Russian armed forces liberated Atradnoye settlement in Kharkov region. Information is confirmed by Russian Defense Ministry, dear friends. Also, in today's first update, I did mention that Russian armed forces liberated Kuzminovka settlement in the DPR, and also Kimakovsky, aide of head of DPR, Igor Kimakovsky, stated that Russian troops have virtually driven the Kiev regime's forces out of the settlement of Chunishino in the southeast of Krasnoarmeysk. And let me now show you, dear friends, on the map where these settlements are located. So let's start with the Krasnoarmeysk, which is Pokrovsk, by the way. Russian name of the city is Krasnoarmeysk. In former, this Kiev regime calls it Pokrovsk. And this is a Chunishino settlement, dear friends, right next to Pokrovsk or Krasnoarmeysk itself on the southern eastern side. And it's not just this village that is under Russian control, but this evening, little earlier, before I start this live stream, a number of channels began reporting that entire southern part of Krasnoarmeysk or Pokrovsk is in a gray zone now, and the Kiev regime's forces allegedly are whining about infiltration of this part of the city by Russian forces, and even Kiev regime's mappers colored this area as a gray zone, which clearly indicates a big presence of the Russian troops in this direction. And some reports are that Russian troops not just infiltrated these high-rise apartment blocks, by the way, but according to some reports, Russian troops already reached this private housing area also. So yet again, if true, then I guess it's only a matter of potentially several days, and the entire this part of Krasnoarmeysk or Pokrovsk will be colored as liberated by Russian forces. Right now, it's in a gray zone. That's when it comes to Pokrovsk direction. Also, dear friends, Russian forces continue their offensive operations in a breakthrough zone on the northern side of Pokrovsk. And today we have reports that Russian troops basically entered their Nikanorovka settlement in this breakthrough area. You remember after Russian breakthrough in this direction, Kiev regime sent quite a number of whatever reserves they had, including neo-Nazi Azov brigade in this direction. And in the first couple of days, Kiev regime was claiming that they managed to stop Russian breakthrough, they managed to stop Russian offensive. I never believed any of those claims, sir. And well, rightfully so, dear friends, because if anyone has initiative in this area, it's Russian forces and it's Russian troops that still continue to enlarge this their controlled area in this breakthrough zone. And that's why Russian troops are basically in Nikanorovka, conducting now basically assault on Nikanorovka, right? Also, this Novaya Shakhovo, tiny villager, soon gonna become first in part of a gray zone, and then of course it will be liberated. The same can be said about Dorozhna settlement. So breakthrough continues in this direction. But now let me show you another settlement that was liberated. This is settlement of Kuzminovka on the southern flank of Seversk, dear friends, that is under full Russian control. Reports are coming in about activization of Russian DRGs in Zvanovka and Svatr Pokrovska. And once these two settlements are under Russian control, one might argue, also Reznikovka, one might argue, by the way, that days of Kiev regime's garrison in Seversk are numbered, because Kiev regime's forces in Seversk will have no safe route for reinforcement and the resupplies, right? Already, Seversk garrison of Kiev regime is struggling with that, because all their main supply and support lines are under Russian drone control. But soon this line is going to be under physical control of the Russian troops. And also today, dear friends, reports are coming in about finalizing clearing operation in a VMK settlement, also in Seversk direction. So Russian troops are advancing towards the Seversk from southern western side, from eastern side, from northern side. By the way, and when it comes to northern side, after clearing operation was finalized in this massive Serebranka forestry, as I already reported in previous updates, Russian troops began offensive in Yampol and Dronovka direction, and Russian troops already are inside the Yampol, and Russian troops are on the outskirts of Dronovka too, and soon, I guess, Dronovka will be, both the settlements, Dronovka and the Yampol, will be completely liberated, and my prediction is that before end of this autumn, Seversk is going to be completely free from enemy forces. Maybe even Yampol, by the way. Maybe even Yampol. And also there was a report about a village in Kharkov region, isn't it, that was liberated by Russian forces. And this is that particular village, Atradnaya, dear friends, relatively large village, like 3-4 dozen of buildings, I guess, in the Kharkov region, where Russian troops are creating a buffer zone. As you can see, several villages are under Russian control in this area. Also, initiative, of course, is in Russian hands, and no matter how much money and weapons NATO gonna allocate to prolong this proxy war, they're not gonna be able to turn the tide. It's just impossible. That being said, dear friends, let's continue with some other news. And in today's first update, I did share quite interesting video, dear friends, when Russian troops were using fiber optic FPV drone to strike on military vehicle of Kiev regime in almost the central part of Kramatorsk. I can show you that video right now, dear friends, because I'm quite sure many people from our community have not seen my first update, and this is the video. Here you can see, let's turn the sound off, and here you can see this drone on fiber optics, and it is fiber optics because the quality of picture is good, and drone is flying almost in central Kramatorsk. Operator of the drone is searching for a military target, and target was spotted. this camouflaged vehicle and strike. And because this is Kramatorsk, by the way, this is FPV drone, fiber optic FPV drone, I can assume that Russian troops, maybe DRGs, are operating inside the city itself, or maybe somewhere in the vicinity of city, because I don't think whatever unit launched this drone was really that far from the city, right? So therefore, maybe one might say that battle for Kramatorsk has begun, because first FPV drones are already there, and I think this is significant. I think this is significant development on the line of contact. When it comes to official line of contact and battles in this direction, then right now Russian troops are a little far. I mean, this is a Kramatorsk city, isn't it? And I guess from Kramatorsk to forward positions of the Russian militaries is maybe 15 kilometers, 20 max, something like that, right? And well, according to some reports, FPV drones, even on fiber optics, by the way, can fly these distances, 15, 20 kilometers. So who knows, maybe this drone was launched actually from line of contact, but most likely this was a work of Russian DRG, either from city itself or from somewhere around the city. I think this is important. This is important. We're going to see more and more such videos in upcoming days, not just from Kramatorsk, but from Slavyansk too. I have no doubts about it. And who knows? Maybe before end of this year, both these cities will be liberated too. Let's hope so. And to continue, dear friends, Novosti reported that Rostec delivered a new batch of Su-34 frontline bombers to Russian Ministry of Defense. United Aircraft Corporation has delivered a new batch of Su-34 fighter bombers to the Russian Ministry of Defense. The Rostec State Corporation announced, which is great news, of course, for Russian militaries, for Russian Air Force. Su-34s definitely proved themselves to be extremely capable planes. All these FAB strikes, by the way, is mainly Su-34s, right? And they are working like non-stop. These planes, by the way, are working basically non-stop, and the precision of these FAB strikes is increasing tremendously, isn't it? Tremendously. So, not surprisingly, many countries are lining up to purchase Su-34s, and already pictures are circulating on the internet with desert camouflage Su-34s being tested by the manufacturer, right? And according to some reports, these planes will be transferred to Algeria in short time. And allegedly Algeria is a country that will purchase, or maybe already did purchase, and soon will receive a Russian Su-57 fifth-gen fighter jets. So Algeria is definitely a bigger partner for Russian Federation and Russian military-industrial complex, for sure. But when it comes to military equipment and military-industrial complex, well, there is more and more bad news for for the U.S. military-industrial complex, because now Washington Post is reporting that Patriot air defense systems are struggling to deal with the Russian missiles. Let's go through details here. So U.S. Patriot surface-to-air missile systems have been performing poorly in intercepting Russian ballistic missiles, the Washington Post reported on yesterday. According to publication, the Patriot is the only system currently available to their key regime forces capable of intercepting Russian ballistic missiles. However, the newspaper emphasized that even this system has failed to intercept a number of recent attacks, attributing this in part to the fact that Russian specialists are modernizing their weapons to circumvent these systems. The newspaper also notes that the Patriot system was recently transferred to Ukraine by Israel, while several more are expected to arrive from European partners this fall. Nonetheless, the Washington Post stressed that in order to create even same balanced of an air shield over the Kiev controlled territory, dozens of such systems would likely be required, and these dozens of such systems cannot be provided, by the way, by NATO. They just technically cannot provide these dozens and dozens of Patriot air defense systems because in Europe, whole NATO countries combined, by the way, you only have probably like 2 dozen of Patriots, right? And US might have another, I don't know, 2-3 dozen. And that's about it, right? And what about missiles, by the way? That's a big question too. Missiles are a big issue, right? Because according to many reports, including in the Western so-called media, in many cases, Kiev regime and NATO troops, basically, that are operating with these Patriot systems on the Kiev-controlled territory are struggling with their missiles, right? There are not that many missiles of Patriot. So good news, by the way, I will say. Good news for Russia, bad news for Kiev regime and its NATO backers, and bad news for U.S. military-industrial complex. Okay, let's continue. I'm probably getting tired, dear friends. I began reading the article from my name. I published this on my Twitter X page and on Telegram too. But news itself is, dear friends, that Slovakia to hand over the mining vehicles to Kiev regime, which is unfortunate. Defense ministers of Slovakia and the Kiev regime, Shmigal and Kalinak, just signed agreement in Kiev, but Fico's government allegedly is still holding out on a little aid, and maybe Bratislava is not sending little aid no more to Kiev regime after Fico's government was entered the office. But this demining equipment is also used for all sorts of terrorist operations, right? When Kiev regime's forces and the NATO mercenaries conducted that terrorist attack on the Kursk region, you think they used the demining equipment from where? From which countries? And who gives their guarantees to Slovakian government that plans to share this demining equipment, that Kiev regime not going to use these very Slovakian demining vehicles to conduct another incursion into one of the Russian regions? Try at least, right? So it is very unfortunate. It is very unfortunate that these European countries, by the way, that are NATO member states, did actually become a joke, right? All of them become a freaking joke, man, right? Including Slovakia. They have no sovereignty whatsoever. Otherwise, why would Bratislava transfer any military equipment to this terrorist regime of Zelensky? Why? Because Brussels demanding it, right? That's it. And what that makes then Slovakia? Quasi-state. That's what it is, man. Slovakia is not a state, it's a quasi-state, as it is the case in regards to every single NATO member, including Hungary, by the way, that also provides all sorts of so-called non-lethal assistance to Kiev regime to nowadays, despite all the terrorist attacks that Kiev regime conducted against Hungarian people and also against Hungarian national interests while targeting, for example, this Druzhba pipeline that supplies oil to Hungary. All these NATO member states are, by the way, quasi-states in reality, and they have no sovereignty whatsoever. And people of these countries have no say in their future, in the future of themselves and the future of their, in regards to future of their kids and the grandkids. That's how it is, man. There is no sovereign countries in our collective West. None. Period. Meanwhile, another article from Politico, dear friends, well, this time Politico is targeting, coming up with a hit piece on Zelensky. Not surprisingly, because I have said there quite a number of times before, isn't it, that Washington not just want to replace Zelensky, but Washington wants to replace Zelensky with its own candidate. And I think among potential candidates that Washington is considering, favorite of the Washington might be former aide of Zelensky, Arestovich, because he is being promoted by sources in US and outside of US that can be traced to Washington, right? One way or another. But nevertheless, and therefore, by the way, not at all surprising that Politico or any other US so-called media outlet will come up with more and more hit pieces on Zelensky to prepare the ground for change, right? But before that change happens, let's go through this news. Here, Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky is actively preparing for re-election and is increasing pressure on his opponents through criminal cases. Despite publicly declaring his readiness to leave the office, Politico reports. I mean, clearly a hit piece, isn't it? And Zelensky deserved it, by the way. I mean, Zelensky deserved all possible criticism that there can be, right? But we should always understand what hides behind the criticism, what intentions, right? And in case of Politico, of course, it's Washington's interest to remove Zelensky and replace him basically with its own candidate, while London has a very different approach, right? And different favorites when it comes to replacements of Zelensky. But nevertheless, let's continue. Politico sources reported that Vladimir Zelensky, despite publicly declaring his readiness to leave the presidency, actually intends to run for another term and has already begun campaign to intimidate his opponents. According to publications, Zelensky has repeatedly assured Western media that he is not clinging to power, but domestically he is optimistic about his re-election and actively criticizes his opponents. As two MPs from the Servant of the People party told the Politico, Zelensky is criticizing elected officials, civil society activists, and journalists for failing to present a constantly flattering image of Ukraine to Western partners. The publication notes that such attacks have become regular, especially in recent months. According to one former Ukrainian minister, Zelensky's team is using their tactic of criminally prosecuting those who openly oppose him. Essentially, they are blackmailing all their potential or perceived opponents. Their source told their publication, and by the way, they are killing. Zelensky's regime is killing, by the way, people, right? And remember, there was attacks in European soil even, right? On certain public figures from Kiev-controlled territory, from this so-called Ukraine, that were assassinated, or there was assassination attempts on numerous occasions, right? And you think who is behind these attacks? Of course, Zelensky's regime, right? So it's not just intimidation, but they are actually killing people that they consider to be a threat when they can kill. Politico also emphasizes that pressure is being exerted not only on politicians, but also on civil society organizations. According to prominent Ukrainian activists, the security service of Ukraine is being used to intimidate anti-corruption agencies and obstruct abstract investigations into individuals close to Zelensky. In an interview with Axios earlier, Vladimir Zelensky promised not to run in the election if the conflict between Ukraine and Russia ends. Zelensky also stated that holding a presidential election in Ukraine is only possible with a ceasefire and international support. So, well, situation is getting more and more dramatic on the Kyiv controlled territory. This is for sure. And only question I have personally is who will replace Zelensky. London considers Zaluzhny, former head of general staff of Kyiv regime, as a future leader of a Kyiv controlled territory. And the US, as I said, Washington has several candidates, and I think among them, potentially favorite one could be this Arestovich figure. That was the aide of Zelensky a couple of years ago, but then they just split and went different ways, right? We will see. But Zelensky's fate is definitely sealed. If he will manage to run on time towards Israel, he might survive. If not, then most likely he will be annulled, right? And probably his neutralization will be blamed on Moscow, although Moscow will have nothing to do with it, right? It will be Western secret services, obviously. Their order, right? Let's continue, dear friends. And I guess at this point, everyone knows in this world that yet another French prime minister resigned today. Sébastien Lecornu has stepped down after only 27 days in office, making his tenure the shortest in the French history. So French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has announced his resignation less than 12 hours after appointing new cabinet. The French parliament is deeply divided over efforts to pass a new budget that would tackle rising debt. Former defense minister Lecornu was the seventh prime minister appointed by French President Emmanuel Macron and the fifth in the last 2 years that had to resign. His sudden resignation, less than a month after entering the role, makes him the shortest-lived prime minister in modern French history. And well, I mean, what can I say, man? France is in big trouble, man. France is in big trouble in terms of social fabric, in terms of economical situation, in terms of all possible terms. But France is descending towards very, very dark place, and I don't know if anything can save this country now. I really don't, because it seems like French so-called elites simply don't care, man. They are more focused on the prolongation of this proxy war against Russia than on the fate of France itself and their French citizens, right? So how this country gonna survive is anybody's guess. But France is in a deep trouble, that's for sure, man. And this is shame. This is shame, of course. First of all, who's gonna suffer, by the way, because of this decline of this Fifth Republic? It's gonna be ordinary people like us, right? And it's never good stuff, man. It's never good stuff. We ordinary people only have each other, right? All over the world, about it. Because if you think elites gonna ever care about us, no, man. They don't. If we are lucky enough, if then we might live in a country where elites are at least take into account public opinions, and are trying as much as they can to keep public happy, and that means they're gonna work for public interests, right? Even if they don't want to. But in other cases, well, you have a situation like in Europe right now, when elites literally have no care whatsoever about their fellow citizens, about their country's economy, and so on. They literally just don't care, man. Right? And there's too many examples of that. Meanwhile, dear friends, let's talk about some other topics too. And how long is this live stream? Oh, it's already more than an hour, isn't it? Okay, it's already more than an hour, and I do have quite a number of news, so let's not waste time. Dear friends, just a couple of hours ago, media here in Russia reported that Putin and Israeli Prime Minister, Russian President Putin and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu had their phone conversation. They discussed Trump's Gaza plan, talked stabilizing Syria, and negotiated a solution to Iran's nuclear program. Netanyahu wished Putin on the eve of his birthday. Okay, in reality, we're not gonna know what they actually talked about. And it is unfortunate, by the way, that Russian president still maintains, seems like, good relationships with Netanyahu. I don't like this whatsoever, man. Netanyahu is a mass murderer and a war criminal, and it is shame that Russian president wasted time talking to this garbage, right? But it is what it is, man. As I said, man, elites do live in very different world, right? Everywhere, all over the world. And if we are lucky, those elites might think about public interests, right? Because that allows them to stay in power, right? If public is happy, then they are in power. They're staying in power. But in there are more and more cases when those elites just simply have no care, man, about public. Especially this is the case in the Western world right now. To continue, dear friends, on the Middle East, there were negotiations, as I announced in today's first update. Negotiations between Israel and Hamas are underway in Sharm el Sheikh, mediated by, this is Egypt, by the way. This Sharm el Sheikh is a resort in Egypt, and these negotiations are negotiated by Cairo and Washington. Steve Witkoff, special representative of U.S. president, is also participating in these talks. If the negotiations are successful, 20 Israeli hostages will be released, and the bodies of their dead hostages will be handed over. Later, at the same time, Israel is reportedly committing to release an unspecified number of Palestinian hostages held without a trial in Israeli jails. Also, I mentioned in today's first update that Hamas agrees to disarm, according to Al Arabiya. Hamas is willing to hand over weapons to Palestinian Egyptian Authority under their international supervision. But this to happen, of course, these negotiations based on Trump's 20-point de-escalation plan have to be successful. But question is how honest Trump was and the U.S. administration or Israeli regime while announcing this 20-point plan of the escalation and agreeing on that. Me personally, I'm skeptical that they were genuine. I don't think they were genuine, and this is some sort of deception operation on part of Washington and Tel Aviv, on part of U.S. and Israel. I have no doubts about it. Something dodgy is going on there, because neither Washington, neither Israeli regime ever demonstrated before that they have any care about peace or stability, or they want to save lives of the people. So I don't think they changed overnight, right? People don't change like that. So therefore, something dodgy is hiding behind this 20-point plan that U.S. initiated, announced, and we can speculate what that can be. I don't know, but possibly Washington wants to divert public's attention and prepare ground for attack on Iran, because I think that's what is going on. Washington wants to attack Iran, by the way. Now something will happen. Israeli secret services, or maybe together with their US secret services, will orchestrate some terrorist attack, right? They will blame that on Hamas. They might even use their assets that they have inside the Hamas, right? So that this false flag operation will look as realistic as it can get, right? And I don't think anybody has any doubts that Israeli secret services do have to nowadays assets inside the Hamas, right? And after all, we should keep in mind that it was Israel that helped Hamas to defeat Fatah, right? When they had an infight. And so I think Israel will orchestrate terrorist attack or something like that to derail this peace process. Then Israel will begin further, military operations again. Israel will reignite military operations. US will get engaged too, right? And there may be, under the pretext of targeting Hamas, US will move into a region, great number of military assets, right? And process is potentially underway, and eventually they will use these assets on the first phase, on first stage, maybe to target Hamas, yes, or Gaza Strip. But then they will switch to Iran. That's what is going to happen. Once they will build up enough force, they will switch to Iran, and they will have enough force in the place to carry out relatively longer lasting offensive operations, airstrikes, and so on, right? I think that's what is happening, and maybe that's why this report was circulating on internet in past 24 to 48 hours that USS Gerald Ford of US Navy has arrived in the Western Mediterranean. And probably now this vessel, this strike group, aircraft strike group, is moving towards Eastern Mediterranean, right? And soon will be somewhere in not far away from Gaza Strip, on a range when planes, for example, from this aircraft carrier can target Gaza Strip, and if necessary, with refueling, with aerial refueling, even reach Iran. And on this matter, dear friends, in previous days, I did reported that dozens of refueling tankers, aerial tankers, have been moved to Middle East by US. Why? Dozens of refueling tankers, aerial refueling tankers, and there are also fighter jets, fighter bombers. Question is why? What for? I think that's what is going on, man. This 20-point plan, so-called peace plan in regards to Gaza Strip, is a deception operation. I'm quite sure about it. And in reality, US and Israel and their allies are preparing to strike Iran. That's what's going on, I think. And by the way, Trump himself is actually hinting on attacks on Iran, about possible attacks on Iran. And he said during his speech before sailors, US sailors, that, and this is quote, "We are not going to wait so longer to hit Iran again." And he was talking about situation if Iran will resume producing nuclear weapons. Trump claimed during the same speech that Iran was months away to build a nuclear weapon, and basically this kind of statements from Trump clearly is a justification, sort of the criminal actions that US gonna take against Iran, because no independent sources ever claimed that Iran actually was building nuclear weapons, or Iran was months away to build a nuclear weapon. Non-trustworthy, respected, or independent source ever said that. And this claim of Trump that Iran was a month away to build nuclear weapons is a total BS, right? And but making such statements gives him opportunity to, at one point, said that, well, Iran is building nuclear weapons again, and therefore we have to go ahead and strike. And who's going to reject, right? Does Washington listen to anybody? No. And unfortunately, public in US also is quite reluctant to challenge their own elites. So therefore, at this point, clearly White House, Pentagon, they are CIA or Langley, they clearly are behaving any ways they want, right? Like criminal gangs, actually. US leadership, US state institutions no longer acting as a state institutions. They are acting as some sort of a criminal gang. And majority of our community probably will agree with me on that. I mean, I believe I even have a video of his statements, dear friends. Let me check. I do. So let me share with you, dear friends, this this video. It will only take like a minute. In case you have not have seen this short clip, let's see what Trump had to say there.
And we shot 30 Tomahawks, you know that. We, on top of, after the B-2, how about that? The B-2s, what they did, those beautiful flying wings, what they did, they hit every single target they hit. And just in case, we shot 30 Tomahawks out of a submarine, every one of them hit too. So I would say Iran was not particularly thrilled. They were going to have a nuclear weapon within a month. And now they can start the operation all over again, but I hope they don't, because we'll have to take care of that too if they do. I let them know that you want to do that, it's fine. But
you see, he's already speculating that, well, now they're going to do it again and we will strike. You see, that's how they operate, by the way. They are creating false narratives and then acting on these false narratives that they just created. That's what they do time and again, right? And unfortunately, Western societies that should keep their elites in check are doing nothing about it, which is, I mean, in majority of the Western societies, that is, right? Which is very unfortunate, man. It should not be this way, but it is. Oh, let's continue.
That, and we're not going to wait so long. It should have been done long before I came along. You know that I had the pilots of the B-2s in my office, the famous Oval Office. I had them in the B-2s. They came in to the White House, and we talked about it. They said, you know, sir, for 22 years, our predecessors and us trained for that hit. For 22 years, they were training to take out the nuclear potential of Iran. He said, but it was only when you came along that we did it. And they were so happy that they did it. But they've been training for that hit for 22 years.
So you see, dear friends, I mean, it's quite clear, isn't it? Trump himself personally is engaged in creating all these false narratives. He's personally engaged in deception operations, right? And he's already hinting that, well, we destroyed, they were once away to build nukes, but they are going to launch this program again. And, well, they can do it, but we're going to strike then again, and we're not going to wait. They are creating false narrative, and they're acting then on these false narratives. That's what is happening when it comes to Western so-called elites, man. And that's why I'm saying this 20-point plan, so-called peace plan in regards to Gaza Strip, is not really about bringing peace to Palestinian people, but it's about deception. And in reality, US, Israel, and their allies are preparing for potentially unprecedented scale of escalation in the Middle East that will begin with the strikes on Iran. That's what is going on, I think. But Iran is not alone. Iran is not alone, and I guess many countries worldwide do understand that it's only a matter of time when globalists, neocons, and the Zionists will make next move in the Middle East against Iran and to basically provoke a regional war. I have spoke about it many times before. Why they would want a regional war? To say it in few words, globalists and neocons want regional war to shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf, right? To cut off China and the global South from energy sources, from Middle Eastern energy sources, dear friends. And they want it, and this is Persian Gulf, right? They want to shut down navigation here while provoking regional war on the sectarian and religious lines here. They want to cut off a global South, including China, from Middle Eastern energy sources. And their goal is to force China to increase its dependence on Russian energy supplies towards the critical level, right? Because I'm quite sure globalists and neocons are thinking that if they will succeed in this, they will provoke then confrontation between China and Russia, one way or another, but they probably are quite sure that they will manage to do it, right? And this way they will neutralize their two main opponents on a geopolitical scale. That's what their hope is. And that's why they don't care, by the way. For them, this goal is much more important than anything else, right? To get rid of two most capable opponents on geopolitical scale. So therefore, they will sacrifice everything and everybody for this goal, right? And that's why argument that, well, if they will shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf, then oil prices will skyrocket and it will hurt Western economies too. That's why this argument is not working, because they just don't care. For them, for globalists and the neocons, this goal to get rid of China and Russia is a primary goal, right? Nothing is close. And that's why they will continue to operate this way until they're not being put in their place, basically. And I think leadership of Russia and China do understand what is the game plan of their globalists and the neocons, right? I think both countries, leadership of both countries, Russia and China, understands this. And there are some countermeasures being taken, right? To make sure that globalists and neocons and Zionists and their assets not going to succeed in destabilizing the Middle East, right? And for example, Russia and China are assisting Iran militarily, right? Russia and China are using their diplomatic means to make sure, and their diplomatic connections with their regional countries, not just with Iran, but with the regional countries. That is Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, all of them, to make sure that globalists and neocons not gonna provoke conflict between them and Iran, right? And at the same time, by the way, Russia and China are delivering significant volumes of weapon systems to Iran. And on this very topic, we have this report that third Russian AN-124 flight is taking place from Irkutsk, or took place already from Irkutsk to Iran in just over a week. And this is just one AN-124s, by the way. And there are reports about or IL-76s also flying from Russia and their Central Asian republics to Iran, right, with their unknown cargo. But when it comes to AN-124s, by the way, this is a third Russian Air Force AN-124 transport aircraft that has departed from Irkutsk on a route towards the Iran. And Irkutsk is, of course, home to aviation plant. And even though exact nature of cargo remains undisclosed, it is known that and Iranian observers are suggesting that flights may be linked to deliveries of Su-30 Mk fighter jets that you see right now on your screens, dear friends. Mk-30s, or Su-30s, by the way, Su-30 fighter jets clearly prove themselves to be capable planes. They are in high demand worldwide, right? These Russian planes. India has hundreds of them, in its air force, about 200 planes, for example. I'm not sure even Russia has 200 of Su-30s, by the way, but India does, and India was producing those planes under their Russian license. Soon may become producing Su-57s, but that's a whole different story. When it comes to Iran, by the way, and as I said, actions of the Moscow and Beijing, clearly both capitals are doing whatever they can to make sure that the Middle East gonna stay as stable as possible. Of course, Moscow and Beijing cannot do everything, obviously, right? But in areas where Moscow and Beijing, Russia and China can be successful, both countries are very much proactive, and we don't know, by the way. Maybe during today's conversation with Netanyahu, Russian president warned him not to escalate with Iran. Maybe Russian president warned him not to escalate with Iran, and probably he did. Right? So that's what is going on in regards to Middle East, and Iran is getting more and more weapons, man. All sorts of weapons from friendly nations, right? And strategical partners. Russia and Iran are strategical partners, by the way, and hopefully, both countries, Russia and China, will manage, together with the other allies, by the way. India also tremendously interested in the peace and stability in the Middle East, right? And all over the world. Other countries, hopefully, BRICS member states, Shanghai Cooperation Organization member states, will manage to avoid regional war in the Middle East and the total destabilization. Hopefully. Let's see. This is struggle, by the way, between globalists, Zionists, between collective West, basically, and the rest of the world, because collective West wants regional war in the Middle East, the rest of the world don't. So let's see how things gonna go down. Hopefully, globalists and neocons and Zionists will fail. Hopefully, they will fail. And to continue, dear friends, a couple of more news here. Venezuela reported their bomb threats against the U.S. Embassy in Caracas. So Venezuelan National Assembly Speaker George Rodriguez announced the impending threat. According to RIA Novosti's report, he stated that the country's far-right forces, that most likely are linked with their US CIA, by the way, intended to stage a false flag operation by planting explosives at the US Embassy. We have warned the US administration of a serious threat through 3 different channels, he said in a message published on the social media. And you know, dear friends, I do believe that the US will use whatever assets they have in Venezuela to, of course, create a ground for potential decapitation strike on Venezuela, on Venezuelan political and military leadership, and for regime change. And unfortunately, they do have assets. They do have assets in Venezuela to orchestrate any scale of false flag operations to justify then attack on this Bolivarian Republic. And well, Venezuela needs help, by the way. I don't know if BRICS is strong enough yet to challenge US in this part of the world, but it would be nice. It would be nice to do something about it. It would be very important and great success for the humanity if BRICS and the rest of their world, basically, with the exception of collective West, will manage to deter US from attacking Venezuela. Is it possible? I don't know. I'm not quite sure that BRICS is that strong yet, but maybe it is. Let's see. We need some more activity, I think, from BRICS member states in regards to Latin America in general, and in regards to Venezuela in this particular case to make sure that U.S. not gonna be able to go around and do and kill people whenever they want and wherever they want. Let's see if BRICS will manage to deter US. I don't really have a strong opinion on that because yes, BRICS is strong, but is that strong to challenge US in the southern hemisphere? I don't know. I don't know. And by the way, when it comes to Venezuela, Trump himself, during that very speech before sailors, stated that, almost everybody now, even fishermen, are afraid to go into sea, right? Because they are killing people left and right. That is American militaries, right? Under the orders of Trump. And he is hinting now that they're gonna hunt them down on the land. And formally, he's talking about drug cartels, but in reality, we all know what he means, right? He's talking about assault on Venezuela. And already a number of channels are reporting that U.S. is preparing ground operations, even to establish control over their airfields, to establish control over the port, and so on. Right? I said before, if Venezuelan people gonna fight, if Venezuelan people will oppose the colonization of their country, then the U.S. has no chances, by the way, and Venezuela will turn into a massive graveyard for U.S. militaries. That's what's gonna happen. And Trump, as I already said, is on a killing spree, and he's bragging about her. And according to Washington Post, U.S. President Donald Trump personally authorized killing of 21 people already on those boats that no one knows belong to whom, and no one knows who these 21 people were. No information about it whatsoever. You know, all we are receiving through media channels is that Trump personally and his inner circle are designating those people to be members of the drug cartels. And even if true, I have some doubts that this is true, but even if so, then where is the due process? Since when countries are going around and killing individuals that allegedly are part of or members of some criminal organizations? Where is the due process? Where is the investigation, due process, and so on? But yet again, as I said, by the way, U.S. state institutions are behaving now, and not just U.S., but Western state institutions are behaving now as if they are like criminal gang, if they are criminal organizations. That's it. They have their own rules and their own justifications for whatever crimes they are committing. And this is one of the reasons, I guess, not the only one, but one of the reasons why Trump will not get a Nobel Peace Prize, according to AP. I mentioned this in my previous updates, that after Obama's victory, committee now rewards durable peace, international cooperation, and institutional work. And, these are areas where Trump's record may work against him. And of course, it will work against him, by the way. He's a mass murderer. Factually, this is factually accurate statement, by the way. He personally authorized killing of 21 people without any due process. So, can one be counted as a mass murderer while killing 21 people without due process? I think so. So, obviously, Nobel Committee, no matter how degenerated that Nobel Committee is, they cannot award the Nobel Peace Prize to freaking mass murderer, man. They did before. They awarded a Nobel Peace Prize to Obama. That was also going on a killing spree, right? And he was killing U.S. citizens too, by the way, with these drone strikes. But at the time when Nobel Peace Prize was given to him, no one really know what Obama gonna do. He was just elected as a president, right? But during his presidency, he killed more civilians with the drone strikes, for example, than his predecessors, which is quite telling. And there are a few more news, dear friends. Interfax is reporting that India plans to purchase 5 more S-400 air defense systems from Russia, which is very important. I think Indian Ministry of Defense will discuss with Russia this week the purchase of an additional 5 S-400 Triumph air defense missile systems. The Hindustan Times reported on Monday, citing sources. Indian defense officials will meet with their Russian counterparts this week for talks on the joint production of or procurement of 5 more Russian S-400s to improve India's long-term defense capabilities, the newspaper reported. According to HT, Hindustan Times, the parties have already agreed on the purchase price, but several aspects remain to be finalized. Discussions are underway regarding their option of directly purchasing 3 of their 5 systems and assembling the remaining 2 by private Indian companies through technology transfer. Their potential agreement would include their maintenance and the repair of S-400s in cooperation with the Indian private sector, their sources said. HT, Hindustan Times, notes that the agreement is expected to be approved before Russian President Vladimir Putin visit to India on December 5th. Furthermore, according to their publication, Delhi also plans to purchase Air-37 air-to-air missiles with a range of over 200 kilometers from Russia in order to increase their combat capabilities of India's Su-30 MKI fighter jets. And this is also important news, of course. And as I said, India is operating with about 200 Su-30s, by the way. Most of it were built in India as a result of technology transfer from Russia and they're under the Russian license. And I think it is very much possible that Moscow and New Delhi will reach agreement about S-400, about this additional purchase of S-400s, including on the matter of transfer of technology and 2 S-400s to be built in Indian itself, right? And I see no reason why would Moscow refuse. India is a strategic partner of Russia, and Moscow was transferring technology to India for decades and decades, by the way. Now, I mean, it's just a cooperation between Moscow and New Delhi has great history, right? Great history that Western elites don't understand, but we do, right? So therefore, I'm quite sure before Russian president will visit India, agreement will be reached, and as this report said, 3 S-400s will be purchased in Russia. Russian-built ones will be transferred to India, and 2 S-400s will be built in India under the Russian license, and therefore, Russian military-industrial complex will provide Indian colleagues with all their necessary technologies and the knowledge to do this stuff. And this will benefit India tremendously, obviously, because at some point, India will be in a position to build their own completely domestic air defense, extremely capable air defense systems. So interesting news, isn't it? Important news, I think. And I'm going to end the news segment, dear friends, on this report that Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, stated that his country should not adapt to the euro because the European Union is disintegrating. Reuters quotes him as saying Hungary should not adapt the euro because the European Union is disintegrating, and Hungary should not tie its fate to that bloc. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban said in an interview with the economic news website Economex on Monday. And okay, by the way, quite clear statements there from Budapest about their take on fate of EU. By the way, right? They don't really believe in EU, do they? So that's quite interesting. And they don't believe in euro too, therefore, right? And that's about it, dear friends, for news segment. And now there was one super chat. There was one super chat during the live stream, dear friends. So let me highlight the super chat first, and then I will join community chat for a little while. If you want to donate, dear friends, to this project, or if you want to help me maintain this project, you can do it through PayPal, Boosty platforms. You can subscribe to my Patreon page. Unfortunately, in last 2 weeks, 5 members left Patreon, which is sad, but you know, maybe they will come back. Maybe they will come back. I don't know. Maybe you will consider to become a Patreon of this project and subscribe to my Patreon page. Links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment, dear friends. And I do have quite a lot of content there on Patreon. Now let me highlight this super chat. Also during the streams, right now, for example, you can use a super chat feature on Rumble as Blorp did. Thank you very much, Blorp, for your super chat, $5 donation, and comment. And comment is false flag is all one has when morally bankrupt. Blorp is saying, and well, I have to agree with you. It seems like false flag operations and all sorts of provocations are only that there is left for globalists and their allies, right? When last time they actually acted adequately? I mean, can you really like remember the time when Western so-called elites were acting adequately? Actually, I mean, I don't know when that was last time. False flag operations, deceptions, provocations. That's all. That's all they do. And that's why I'm saying, by the way, as long as this is the case, Western elites just cannot be trusted, objectively speaking. And their only hope is that at some point, Western societies will reclaim their own countries, make some changes in elites, right? They will allow decent people to lead the societies and the countries. And in that case, yes, rest of the world can actually cooperate with with Western world. But until then, it is what it is, man. How you can trust current elites there, man? When people in the West themselves are shocked to see, informed part of it at least, are shocked to see how their elites are behaving. So, and there was a donation, dear friends, on the PayPal during the live stream. Nathan, thank you very much for your $15 donation. And comment from Nathan is, thank you, Levan. We all appreciate your hard work. Thank you very much, Nathan, for your support and attention. Truly grateful for that. Thank you. And dear friends, and thank you for your kind words. And dear friends, I will join community chat for a little while. I mean, news segment was quite longer, 1 hour and like 45 minutes. But hopefully you did find it informative and interesting. And if so, dear friends, please like the video and leave some commentary after stream ends. This might help to deal with this tremendously aggressive algorithm, by the way. I mean, today, YouTube is killing my channel extra hard. My videos are being suppressed, and even during the live stream, I guess very few people received a notification. I don't know what happened. At least, we are 100 or 120, 150 during the live streams. But, today, YouTube's algorithm is especially angry on my channel, I guess. Anyways, I'm scrolling, dear friends, right now in a chat, and when I see question or the comment directed to me, I will react on it. I see comment. Gray Signal is commenting. I was reading about Germans in World War II when they rescued Mussolini from his capture in 1943. They used gliders to get to his location and got him out of there. Yes, that was one of the well, unfortunately, that was one of the operations that German forces conducted that are probably even to nowadays being taught in military schools. Uh, maybe it was a unique operation for its time, for sure, and they did manage to. And it was in mountain region of Italy, and they did manage to free Mussolini. So yes, it was something extraordinary at the time. But it did not help fascists, did it? Eventually, Soviet people destroy fascists anyways, right? With assistance of other countries too, obviously, with assistance of British people, with assistance of American people, of course, with assistance of other uh, nations that were never allies with, at least during the war, was not allies with Nazi Germany. But of course, it was Red Army and Soviet people that destroyed most of the German divisions during the Second World War, and they're rightfully so. Descendants of fighters of the Red Army are claiming that their grandfathers and their great grandfathers and their fathers achieved this, bring this victory to whole of humanity. Yet again, with the assistance of others, of course, but you know, because we're never gonna say, like U.S. president does, by the way, that it was just us and no one else was doing nothing. No, of course, U.S. did play part. When it is become clear that Soviet Union was decimating division after division of the Nazi Germany, they did eventually open second front. I mean, U.S. and UK, right? U.S. and the British Empire. It was not yet UK; it was British Empire still. But they could open the second front and help better year earlier, but they did not, right? But when they realized that, well, Soviet Union gonna crush Nazi Germany, well, they went in because they wanted to occupy some territories, right? And they did, by the way. They're still occupying those territories to nowadays. And that's why Germany is still occupied country and not has no sovereignty whatsoever. Italy the same. And I will argue all the others. I will argue all the others, by the way. At this point, London and Washington, there still are main powerhouses when it comes to Western world. Hardly anyone can argue with that. Anyways, dear friends, let's continue and my apologies, dear friends, if I will miss your question. I'm just scrolling fast and I'm trying to catch capital Q's or capital letters. Juan Lieva is commenting, left their oil spills like the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Yes, I understand your sarcasm and irony, absolutely, Juan. The Politico's article about vessels that are linked to Russia leaving some oil spill is clearly attempt to create yet another false narrative and pretext for their NATO to try at least to shut down a Baltic Sea, possibly Northern Sea, right? English Channel to Russian vessels or vessels that are linked to Russia. This would not work. This would not work. I'm quite sure about it. But they are trying. They are clearly trying. I see a question from Gracie Knoll. Does Russia have a killer satellites that have their capability to take down satellites in space? Yes, the Soviet Union already had their satellites that were built. If I remember correctly, by the way, there were specific satellites with their specific tasks to, if necessary, um, attached to enemy satellites and change their orbits, basically make them useless. Uh, those satellites not necessarily gonna strike enemy satellites because in that case there will be massive debris of thousands of pieces. Can you imagine speeds out there in space? These satellites are constantly failing towards the Earth with a speed of, I don't know, 30, 40,000 kilometers a second or 30 to 40 kilometers a second or something like that. It's massive speeds, right? And so if there is a strike on the satellite, that will create a huge volume of fragments, debris that can damage your satellites too. So therefore, you want to use some other tactics. And from what I have read on the matter, Soviet Union had, and I guess Russia also has now, had special satellites that would attach themselves to enemy satellite and just move them away, change their orbits, basically, right? They can send them down to the earth and they will burn down in the atmosphere, or they can send them towards, far from Earth. In any case, those satellites, once they lose their, their trajectory, their orbit, they are useless after that. So yes, there is such technologies in the place, and I think if Russia wanted to, we can neutralize enemy satellites of the hostile states. But I guess order is not there yet. But yet again, I'm not an astrophysic, of course. I'm not an expert in that field. I'm just a simple journalist. Right now, citizen journalist, but my work experience is in journalism. And so I'm not claiming that, I'm expert in any field. I know some stuff about journalism, by the way. That's my field of expertise. Well, it's great to see, such a active conversation between the community, isn't it? That makes me much more happier, by the way, than questions directed to me personally, because that means our community is active, real. So thank you very much for that. Router Greening is commenting. Hello, Router. Ruth is, dear friends, one of the veterans of our community. Ruth was a member of our community probably before we reached even 100. So thank you very much, Ruth, for being here. Thank you, and for all the attention and support from you. And comment from Ruth is Alexander Christoforou is in Moscow currently. Hope you get to meet up. Well, I know he is in Moscow, and I have contacted him. And you may not believe, but today I should have an interview with him. But for last several days, there is, I don't know, maybe because it's a magnetic storm or some stuff. I was not feeling well, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it today. But hopefully, while he is here in Moscow, we will manage to do interview. So I'm thinking about it, and I will definitely try to make an interview and give our community, share with our community thoughts of Alex Christoforou about major topics. And he's, of course, by the way, one of the leading figures in alternative media. So I don't really have to introduce him, right? I mean, we are talking about host of Duran show and one of the great champions of alternative media. So Nidish Kumar is commenting, Levan, you keep changing your timings, keep it stable. It is hard to get your notifications on YouTube, and you changing it makes it worse. Well, from Monday to Thursday, I know what you are talking about, Nidish, but from Monday to Thursday, the second update is going to be at 10 o'clock. From Monday to Thursday, these live streams basically that are second updates or main updates, we can call it anyway we want. I will launch these updates at 10 o'clock if there is no technical issues or something like that. From Monday to Thursday, live streams are on 10 p.m. Moscow time. When it comes to first update, I mean, with first update, I just I have little more. I cannot publish it in the same time regularly because it's a pre-recorded video. So sometimes I may go out and do walk and talk type of video. Sometimes I may record here in this improvised studio, but I cannot know timing. I'm trying to publish it around 3 p.m. For example, that's how I published videos today, for example. But with these pre-recorded first updates, it is a bit difficult to publish the videos, publish the updates at one particular time. But live streams from Monday to Friday, it's 10 p.m. Moscow time. On Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays, I want to do live streams at either at 1 p.m. or 3 p.m. I mean, one of those. I mean, I have a life too, isn't it? I mean, I have life too, and sometimes I just have to do some stuff here at home, and I may just not be able to do any live stream whatsoever. So, but I'm trying to maintain same time for updates as much as I can. So I understand what you are talking about, Nidish, absolutely. Nidish is Nidish is commenting also, Levan. I think you must also use most searched and related keywords in your description to increase your reach and their impact algorithms. How am I going to find out what the most searched and related keywords are? I just don't know. I just don't know how to do it. But when it comes to description, in the description box lately, I began publishing headlines and the links to the news that I'm using in a updater. I done it just because, in case you want to read whole article, you just go in a description box, you open it, and most likely you will find a link to the particular news that you are interested. So I'm doing it because it just may be convenient for our community. But when it comes to like keywords, most search keywords, I don't know how to find out what these most search keywords are. So I'm too bad in this technical stuff, Nidish. I'm like a dinosaur, So I'm learning though. I'm learning. I'm trying to learn as much as I can. And you see, I began today publishing shorts. I published 7 shorts today from first update. So also, Nitish is asking the one who is conducting elections in Syria. Does anyone, UN or any independent agency, observing those elections? I don't know, Nitish. I don't know, and I don't think even if some observers are from some organizations, I don't think they will have any impact on the situation because, of course, Syria is a Turkish proxy. Syria is led right now, run by Turkish proxies, and therefore everything gonna be in a way as Ankara wants. That's it. But I don't know anything about elections in Syria, and I don't think we can call elections any. I don't think there can be elections in Syria. Let's say it this way, because I consider that regime of al-Sharaa to be a terrorist regime, and the terrorist regimes do no elections, right? So, and it is unfortunate, in my personal opinion, it is unfortunate that Russia still maintains bases in Syria, and most likely because of the presence of Russian bases, Moscow is basically obligated kind of, or Moscow is obligating itself to have some communication with this regime in Damascus. That is clearly a terrorist regime, by the way. I mean, Western media, Western so-called elites, they try to whitewash those terrorists, right? But these are mass murderers, right? And I don't believe mass murderers can be reformed. Man. Mass murderers should be either put to sleep or put to prison, into prison for life. That's only 2 ways, right? For mass murderers. That's it, man. I don't see no other ways. And what happened to Syria is a shame. It's a shame, man. So I don't know, Nidish, what to tell you about this topic of elections in Syria. I don't believe there can be elections in Syria. I mean, really elections when people are actually at least voting without being executed, man. Although, of course, as one say goes, it does not matter who is voting for what. What matters, especially in circumstances when there's entire countries being controlled by all sorts of regimes, what actually counts in that case is who is counting these votes, right? Because that's the people that are making decisions. They are calling the shots. It's already 2 hours, man. It's already 2 hours. That means it's 12, 6 past 12 right now here in Moscow. It's already 7th of September. It's Alexander G is commenting more SU-35s. I guess you are commenting, Alexander, this in regards to these planes that are moved towards Iran and probably are delivering some weapon systems. It could be Su-35s too, by the way. Just because those planes are taking off from Irkutsk does not mean that only Su-30s can be transferred. Su-35s can be sent through, and some other aircraft, and there are also any type of equipment, right? You can bring certain equipment to Irkutsk and then move that equipment from Irkutsk to Iran. We just don't know. But to be honest, I've been a little surprised to hear about Su-30s. And now speculations are that Russia is transferring Su-30s. While I do know that there was a contract about Su-35s and MiG-29s, by the way, allegedly already being delivered. And Su-35s should be delivered too. And maybe already being delivered also. I don't know. I am surprised to hear about Su-30s because in past I have not read no article, nothing about any agreement between Iran and Russia on deliveries of Su-30s. So I don't know. I think it could be Su-35 actually. You are on point there. Su-30s, I don't know. I guess we will find out soon. Nitish Kumar is also commenting, Luman, do you think air-to-air missiles are fired from drones will make building costly fighters obsolete in the future? Yes, of course they will. Once meter wave radars have been miniaturized enough to put it in a drone so that this drone can then track and have a firing solution on stealth planes. I guess the era of manned aircraft will be finished on that, most likely. And the era of stealth planes will be finished too at that particular point. Or era of extremely costly fighter jets, because drones can launch missiles from 200 kilometers away and take out plane that costs $100 million. So yeah, so you have a great question, and you know the answer. Probably you will agree with me that yes, once drones will learn how to track and intercept stealth planes, I guess that's about it for these expensive planes. And manned planes, manned aircrafts probably are phasing out, because 6th generation planes already gonna be like dual capable, manned, and they're also drone type, right? When plane can be operated without pilot being in the cockpit, plane can be operated from distance, and that's sixth generation. So 7th generation most likely will be non-manned, just a drone basically, and companies will try to build their as cheap as possible. Although, by the way, when it comes to this 6th, 7th generation planes, you see we are moving closer and closer to upper atmosphere, right? And at some point, I mean, maybe seventh generation of planes requirement will be those planes to be capable of not just flying in our atmosphere, but also on our Earth orbit. And that will require those planes to have a different type of engines, right? So due to extreme complexity of potentially of those planes, they will still be extremely expensive. They will still be extremely expensive. That can be destroyed by cheap, relatively cheap drone and a relatively cheap missile. But based on current trajectory, I mean, that's the direction that we are heading, isn't it? Seventh generation planes most likely will be dual capable to fly in atmosphere and also in space. So they're going to be extremely expensive, by the way. Can you imagine price on such planes? Like $200 million a piece, $300 million a piece. I don't know. But mainly, of course, drones will take over eventually. And manned planes will be assault planes, cargo planes. And assault planes, I mean, when aircraft can take manpower with it, right? Heavily armored assault ships, sort of. But when it comes to fighter jets, I don't think after sixth generation there will be any piloted planes. All drones, I think. And Nidish is also commenting the one we are buying AK-630s as well as for defense against their drones by army. I think these things is tough to answer by Russian forces. AK-630. Let me check right now, Nidish. Is that maritime, this cannon, or assault rifle? Let me check right now. Oh, it's a maritime, yes, maritime gun. And you are buying this for air defense. I mean, AK is building most powerful these guns, by the way, that are built on vessels, right? 10,000 shots at a minute. There is a dual. There is one system that has two guns from AK, right? AK type of guns, and they are firing. Those systems are firing 10,000 rounds a minute, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, these are capable stuff. Yes, I mean, these they can be effective point defense systems for sure, I think. And the US is also, probably of course you know that US is also deploying on its bases these maritime guns, Gatling guns, and that kind of stuff, right? Because they are quite capable when it comes to close range air defense, point air defense. Rate of fire is crazy on these weapons. By the way, thousands of shots a minute, and that's why they have these many barrels so that they will not overheat instantly. And Rafael Petro is commenting, just got here. Levan might have discussed hearing commentators saying Putin shrugging off use of tomahawks, raising his red line, and that among Russian politics, talk of replacing Putin for a too weaker. I know in the Western media, by the way, there is a even in a alternative media, there is talks nowadays Putin being replaced in the Western part of alternative media that there might be some palace coup d'etat or something like that, and Putin might be replaced or something uh, because of his restraint policies. And well, I'm hearing these statements from Western commentators, and I struggle to make any sense of it. You know, at this point, I live here in Russia, right? Uh, I talk to people. Um, I think I do understand their overall mood in a public and among elites. I'm not a part of elites, obviously, but I do monitor their media field, right? More or less. And I don't see a situation, I really don't, dear friends, that situation that will require some extreme measures to be taken. I just don't see it, you know? Uh, and well, Putin is a heavyweight, right? Putin is one of the few heavyweights that there is on geopolitical scale, and he is this heavyweight for a reason. You know, he does not make decisions on his own, right? He is listening to other people, people that prove themselves to be good analysts, right? Heavy intellectuals. He's analyzing all the information that is available for him, and that is a great volume of classified information that we will never know, right? And his policies are based on this overall knowledge, right? That we cannot wrap our minds around because we just don't know that much stuff, right? Because most of the information is classified, isn't it? And so just because we don't understand certain steps of Putin right now does not mean that elites, majority of whom, elites in a palace, let's say, elites from within in a circle of Putin, right, or that are close to him. I mean, those people also have access to this classified information, right? So they do understand better Putin's policies. They should understand better than ordinary people that don't know this much. So therefore, I just struggle to believe that in a circle of Russian president that actually has a clarification to have access to classified information will consider his policies to be weak or something like that. We might consider it this extreme restraint or constant restraint as a weakness, right? Ordinary people. We might speculate on the matter, but not the people from his inner circle that know better, right? Because they know this classified information, and they know why Putin is doing this stuff this way and that stuff that way, right? So I mean, it is easy to criticize, of course. It's always easy, man. Oh, Putin is weak, man, and some stronger, much stronger individual have to be in charge. And I mean, we can talk about this stuff, but uh, it's just this kind of talks are surface level talks, I think. If we dive deep, then we will excuse me, start asking actual questions, right? Who gonna do this palace coup d'etat or whatever? People that are from within his inner circle, right? People that have access to classified information and therefore should understand better. So if they have access to most of the information, if not all, and if they understand better, then why would they destabilize situation in a country this way, right? And why would they even think about orchestrating some sort of a coup d'etat? And after all, by the way, Russia has security services, right? Russia has security services. Who gonna allow you to do unconstitutional moves, man? Who gonna allow you to do coup d'etat or stuff like that? It's not happening, not possible. And we should also keep in mind that Putin's approval rating, by the way, is above 70 constantly, above 70% constantly. So, and he has a support of majority of Russian public, vast majority of Russian public. There was elections last year, right? So people voted for him. People want Putin to lead this country. Society has said its word, and maybe some of us have the different opinion. Maybe some of us did not even went to vote, or some vote for other candidates. It does not matter. Majority of public said its word. They supported Putin, and Putin has every legit right to be president for this term. And if he will win next one too, then next term. Also, we have no rights to do some freaking regime changes and revolutions and that kind of nonsense, by the way. We just cannot afford this, right? We as a society and the country. So therefore, if you ask me what is the percentage chances that something like coup d'etat might happen or palace revolution or something, I will say zero chances on that, man. It's just not happening. And I'm a bit surprised to hear talks about some internal moves in a Kremlin or among leadership of Russia on big alternative channels, in big channels and alternative media. About it. Just recently on Judge Napolitano's show, there was a well-known analyst, by the way, Gester. I cannot remember the name of that person right now. And that person was with quite a confidence was talking about this particular topic. And I was a bit frustrated because I could not understand what this guy was talking about, right? So that's my response, by the way. I just don't see this stuff happening, you know? Michael Kennedy's commenting point defense system. Yes, that's I was saying differently, isn't it? It's a point defense system. Those AKs, AK-630s, they are put usually on the vessels, on the warships. And also, Michael Kennedy is commenting, it would be World War III by now with anyone else but Putin. And I have to agree with you, Mike, absolutely, because yet again, we are ordinary people. Our knowledge is based on open sources and then on our ability of analyzing this information that is available from open sources, right? And that's all we can do, actually. While leadership has, due to their position, they do have access to classified information, and their policies, therefore, not always can be understandable or easily understandable for us, but it does not mean that they are wrong. That means that their decisions are based on more information that we have. Most likely this is the case than otherwise, right? And I have to agree with you. If there was someone else on position of Russian president, someone with a much more hardline approach, then maybe none of us would be alive at this point, right? Because World War III would probably already happened and kill us all. So, you know, if we go emotional, yes, we can say all sorts of stuff. Of course, I do it too. By the way, I mean, when I go emotional, I might say some crap, right? But when I'm serious, when I'm actually analyzing the situation, then of course my judgment is very different. Emotions are never good советники. How should never good advisors, by the way. Yes, emotions are never good advisors, man, I think. And dear friends, that's about it. That's about it for now. Thank you very much for your comments, for your questions, for your attention, dear friends. Many thanks to members of our community who donated to this project. Hopefully you did like the video, and if so, dear friends, let me ask you once again to like the video and leave some commentary. Maybe this will help to deal with this speaking algorithm. I don't know what else to do. If you can, please share. Although I can understand that to share video that is like 2.5 hours is kind of difficult. To whom you're going to share this long video? But anyways, dear friends, thank you all for your attention and support. Have a wonderful day, and see you tomorrow. Bye for now.